Now we're going to use the Arnold rendering system again for this project, and we're going to be rendering each of these components out separately, the spaceship, the planet, etc., so that we can composite this in After Effects. But let's go ahead and let's start texturing our planet Saturn. So if you do not see the Arnold Render plugin visible at the top of your user interface, you're going to go up to Windows, and you're going to go to Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. And at the very bottom of that plugin manager, if you scroll down, you will see MTOA. All right, so that stands for Maya to Arnold. I'll click on Load, Auto Select, and now I'm going to select my geometry, both pieces. I'm selecting the debris field and the planet itself because I want to add both of these components to the one texture. And I'll go to my Hypershade. And in the Hypershade, I'll click on the word Arnold to bring up the node specific to Arnold. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm looking for AI Standard Surface. And I'll click on it to add it to my model. And the first thing I will do is name that Saturn Skin. Now we're going to put that checkerboard pattern on just to get our references straight here. So I'll go to the Color tab under Base, click on the checkerboard at the far end of the slider bar for color, and then in the Render Node window, I will choose Checker. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to select my viewport and hit 6 on the keyboard. And now I can see how the texture reference checkerboard is falling on my model. Now, first thing we'll deal with is that sphere. Now, I want to add another tool to my toolbar, so I'm going to hold down Command-Shift, and I'm going to go to UV at the top of the user interface. I'm going to choose UV Editor. I'll click on that, and I'll select Saturn, the planet first, and with my UV map, I'm going to hit A on the keyboard so that I'm looking at the upper right-hand corner of the texture UV editor. Now, if you remember, just as a kind of a reminder, that any kind of a texture that falls on our geometry must appear in the upper right-hand corner. So once I've got my editor up, I'm going to go up and directly to the right of the little horseshoe magnet inside the UV editor, I'm going to click on the blue box so I can put a skin on this and I can see that UV shell a little bit better. Now I'm just going to tip the sphere in my viewport, and if I look at that checkerboard pattern, those rectangles of white and black are a little bit flatter. They're not quite square. I'm going to right click on the UV map inside the editor, choose shell. I'm going to click on that, and now I'm going to get my scale tool. And I'm going to move this. I'm scaling it, constricting it on the y-axis. I'm doing this so I can get that as square as possible, even though it's a sphere. Once I've got what I want, I'll click on the very center one where it's blue, and if I drag to the lower left a bit, I can scale that whole map in, and I'm going to drag it down towards the bottom because we also have to put the map on for that debris field. I'll go back to my object mode and I'll select the debris field. Now what you're seeing in the UV map is all of those elements that comprise the debris field on top of each other. That's why it's such an opaque blue. So all of them are directly above each other, which really makes it very easy to texture map. So what I'll do now is I'll right click and I'm going to choose shell. Now you want to be careful because there are a number of these. So I'm going to marquee select them just to be sure that I've got what I want. And I've got all of them. I'm going to move this up to the top here for a moment. And I'm going to start scaling it down so that it fits inside of the upper right-hand corner of my UV map. Now I'll put it up here temporarily, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to return to my object mode for my geometry, and I'm going to shift select the debris field and the planet. And I can see now that if I just turn off that checkerboard pattern for a moment, I've got these placed pretty well, so that once I generate the UV map that will open up in Photoshop, all the components will be in that upper right-hand corner. So that's going to work out pretty well. I might go to my shell for the actual planet itself, and perhaps I'll scale that up and optimize that upper right hand corner a little bit more. Now once I've got this set the way I want, I'm going to make sure that I start out back in my object mode. And I'm going to shift select the components that I want to appear in that UV map I'm about to generate. Now, if you're in your editing mode, you're not going to have the opportunity to save this. You'll get an error message. So be sure that you see that your models, when they're selected, that they've got the green outline and the white outline. All right, so now I've got them shift selected. I'm going to go up to the corner of the UV map where it says polygons, and down at the very bottom, I'm going to go to UV snapshot. Now, usually the default setting is 1024 by 1024. Mine has been reduced, so I'm going to change that number. And you'll notice that it updates the size equally whether you do the X or the Y axes, as long as keep aspect ratio is checked off. I'm also going to make sure that my image format is d.png. That's going to give me just the wireframe here so that I can use this in my layer configuration in Photoshop to generate that texture. I'm going to click on Browse. I'm going to go to my folder, and I'm going to save that. And I'll name it Planet Skin, and save. Now when I click OK, it will generate that UV map. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll go into Photoshop and we'll generate our texture map.